You're listening to the greatest multifamily investment advice show. My name is Adam Ras, and now I'm talking everything multifamily for an in-depth conversation, and I will be diving deep into raising capital, deals, and underwriting process. Welcome back to the greatest multifamily advice show. Today we have Teri and Neal, real estate investor, mortgage brokers from Chicago, and focusing on scaling their portfolio, helping investors to get hard money. So before we start, I would like to focus on your beginnings on the lending side and also your multifamily career. So what was the initial steps on your career?
My initial steps in my career, oh my gosh, it started very small, very small.
Yeah.
And, I tell people this all the time, you don't have to jump into something major, before you start buying multi-unit buildings. I mean, here in Chicago, they're very expensive. I mean, you can imagine. So I started small buying, properties under $100,000 and fixing those. I wasn't a flipper. I kept things and, for a period of time until they, got some money under their belts, you should say. And as we did that, and I apologize, should have turned that off.
No worries.
It rings off the hook.
Yeah, we got to take that off the hook. So anyway, I invested in smaller properties until I had a goal. And I know this sounds crazy, that I was 25 years old and I had a goal of having a vacation rental. I wanted to have not a bed and breakfast. I'll make you a martini, but I won't make you breakfast. Okay. I just don't do that. But I wanted to have, a place that, in Chicago that was, whether it was a bed and breakfast style, an inn style, whatever that it was. And so I worked towards that, and it seems that we talk to a lot of people who just want to just jump right into everything. And I'm going, this is a process, of course, if you've got all the money in the world, go for it. But, for me, it was a building process. And so we did a lot of a lot of smaller properties and then got a multi-unit building. And then we bought another multi-unit building. And we bought another multi-unit building. And I turned them into guest houses here in Chicago. So it was Chicago Guest House. I ran the business for 19 years.
Oh.
So 19 years. And I
So the same idea of Airbnb, something.
Yeah, but I came in before Airbnb.
Yeah,
So
100%.
Screw those guys.
That's right. This was 2004. Actually, Brian Chesky came here one time and he's the chairman, and see what he turned into. And she asked him to leave.
I see. Yeah.
It'll never work.
And what people don't understand is because they come in this late, that Airbnb was air bed and breakfast. It was people coming and sleeping on your couch, putting a bunch of people in one building that didn't know one another. And I said, no, nobody's going to do that. Like, what am I just like setting myself up for a lawsuit? Are you kidding me? Like, who's going to do that? But it wasn't until about 2015, 16 that they brought in another member to Airbnb who started doing rentals like what I had, that they were fully furnished apartments. So, I started in 2004. They rolled in around 15 and around 18. They started doing properties like mine. So, what do you say? Can't beat them, join them. I had no choice. But I love multi-unit buildings. I've never been an investor in single family homes, especially in Chicago. You're talking about a $6,000, $7,000 a month note. I don't want to see that go vacant. I don't want to take that over. But if I've got 3 units in a building and one of them goes vacant, it's okay. 2 of them go vacant. That's okay. But I didn't want to carry a whole building like that.
Makes sense.
I've always been a multi-unit fan, and I highly recommend it. I highly recommend it.
So what about the other part, the lending side? When you started, guys, to open this, to be a private lenders and focus on the money side of the things, beside being an investor?
We phased out of Chicago Guest House, again, 19 years. So we phased out of that, and it was the natural transition to go into lending. We love the real estate industry. So it just made sense, and it made the right sense. We've been doing really well, and we love what we do every day. So, investing. You know, we now belong to the National
right.
Association of Private
Yeah,
Lenders,
that's right.
which is pretty exciting. And one of the things that they talked about that they just decided that they don't want to use the word hard money anymore.
And
How's that? I said, I don't know how long it's going to take for that to go away, but they want to call it private lending. And everybody signed off on, you know, every member of the National Private Lenders Association signed off on that. And one of the reasons that they felt it was for governing reasons that they were, you know, it was kind of the baby with the bathwater. You know, they were throwing hard money lenders in the pool with payday lenders and fast cash, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And which, you know, if you go through the United States, not every city allows for that. You'll see cities that have them on every corner, and then you see cities that don't have them at all. We don't want to get deregulated.
I didn't know.
And so, pardon me?
I didn't know that they changed the name in US. I used to hear hard money terms. Here in Canada, we like to use private money, but I didn't know that they prohibited this like naming convention.
Well, you know, they're just trying to change the mentality.
Yeah,
And so, as I said, with the National Association of Private Lenders, on March 22nd, everybody signed a petition to stop using hard money in our advertising, in our marketing. And which I agree, because, you know, again, it kind of has that, you know, what does they say? We try to tell people that you know, our lenders are right next door to the bank. They're not in the back alley behind the bank.
100%.
Yeah. So this is not mob money. This is the real deal. And our lenders get their money from banks, and they get them from credit unions, and they get them from, you know, hedge funds, and they get it from Wall Street money.
Yeah.
So you may not get that loan from Bank of America, but Bank of America is funding
This kind of.
it's part of the portfolio. Exactly. So, you know, we're not exorbitant fees, you know, we're a little bit over, you know, institutional lending, a heck of a lot easier. And, you know, one of the things that I want people to understand when they're buying property is that when you go to an institutional, you know, a bank, they don't really care about the property. They care about you. They want to know you have a good job. You've got, you know, 3 years running. You've got your tax returns, your pay stubs. They want your firstborn. They want your left kidney. They want to know everything about you. Because they don't care if you never rent that place ever a day in your life.
Yeah.
They know that you financially can carry that note. With us, we don't care about you at all. We don't care if you have a job. Well, we
Good
do.
start.
Yeah, we don't care if you have a job. We don't care if you've worked for the last 3 years. We don't care. We care that you are liquid, that you have money to invest. And we care that that property can stand on its own. So if it can't stand on its own, which means that the rent is not going to cover that mortgage note, we're not going to do the loan. And, you know, you have to think about it in terms of being, you know, if you were going to put your shoes or your feet in the shoes of a lender, would you lend somebody money on a property that the rent didn't carry it?
So all of your loan is concourse, I think. It's a concourse loan to be sure that the property is gonna hold itself, and if it didn't, you're gonna go after the guy assets or the personal assets, correct?
Yeah, they're all recourse
They're all
loans.
recourse.
Recourse, I'm sorry, yeah.
We don't have a non-recourse product, and sometimes we get that question, and it's just my opinion, and that is, whenever I get involved in an opportunity like our company, you know, we started off and it was tough, real tough. We had several months, we didn't make a dime, and now business is very good. And we have a great product. But my point is, I wouldn't get involved in something if I wasn't willing to stand behind it personally.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, make my own personal pledge. So we don't have a non-recourse product. I know we've had that question before, and that's kind of my answer. And that is, if you believe in it, then what's the difference on the recourse?
Yeah, if you stand behind it. You know, if you're not willing to stand behind your own project, why would we stand behind it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that all makes sense. You know, I think that there's a big push towards short-term rentals. And, you know, I want everybody to understand that when we do short-term rentals, they use market rent. So if the market rent does not cover that note, we're not going to, I thought, so sorry. I thought he turned that off, and I apologize.
No worries.
That if market rent doesn't cover the note, neither will we. You know, you're going to get lower amount of money from the lender. He's not going to give you as high a loan. So when you go in, you've got, you know, the credit, you've got you could do an 80% loan, but you don't have the market, you don't have the rent to cover it. We're going to lower the leverage. You're going to get 70, 65%, 60%.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that. They go, but hey, I've got experience. I've got this, I've got that. It doesn't matter. Remember, our lenders care about the stability of the property. And so even though, for instance, we're running Chicago Guest House and it's, drawing $60,000 a year on on one of the apartments, that's not market rent. That's not market rent.
60,000 a month.
No, we're talking about one of the apartments.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
No, on just one of the apartments in one of the
Mm.
apartments in the building.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was going to say 60,000, 70,000 a month when it's all of the apartments in the building. But, I can't go in telling a bank and giving them 300, rental statements, showing them, because if the city of Chicago decided that they were going to regulate the industry, which by the way, they did.
Mhm.
I just happened to be grandfathered because I was one of the very first licenses issued in the city of Chicago. But today, the people who are buying those units or people who purchase them from us, they can't do what I did. They can't rent the entire building. So, there's regulations, there's things that change, and some people get grandfathered, some people don't. Sometimes they eliminate that altogether. So what you guys need to do is understand that business. And, I always tell people the first 3 phone calls that I made were to my attorney, to my accountant, and to the city of Chicago before I ever started that business, because I wanted to make sure, that what I started was going to be viable.
Yeah.
And people don't, they so often don't do that. They're buying into complexes, they're buying into with homeowners associations, and they're not looking into those bylaws. You need to look at that stuff before you make a purchasing decision on anything. So don't want to put the squash on that, but always think market rent, always think debt service coverage ratio. That rent needs to exceed the mortgage payments. And, it's a good rule of thumb because, then you're making money. We don't want to see anybody paying people out of their active income for other people to use their property. That makes no
Have other
sense.
people live there. So, but
People do it, but it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, 100%.
So
I think
questions for us. I'm just talking and talking. What would you like to know? What else?
No, I was trying to basically to jump to the lending side of it, especially that I know that you guys work with a lot of Canadians cross-border to invest in US. So my first question was about the foreign national program and what kind of products available to Canadian investors on US to invest on the multifamily side, especially on the buy and hold product. And what was the main restrictions for Canadian from the lending perspective?
Well, those are all very good questions. And I have to say that we're really good with Canadians. It's a big part of our business. And we've had lenders that have opened up their lending to Canadians just because of the volume we do with Canadians. So we appreciate that. And on the multifamily side, whether it's multifamily or single family, as I understand it, if I were to come to Canada to buy as a US with good credit, US citizen good credit, we'd be 65% leverage. And that is on a long-term product. Now, we do have some 70% products, but when you folks out there are running your numbers, we advise in-house, you should have 40% of the purchase price.
Which is 60%. So LTV 60%.
Well, that'll include the fees, because we might even get you a 60, we'll probably get you a 65 as a minimum, might get you 70 with the right debt service. But still, you'd want to have other monies just for your escrows, because if you paid cash for something, you'd have to pay the property taxes on the US side, typically from November up to now. And then if you're using a lender, they're going to escrow your insurance and taxes as well. So we always add that other 5% in there. And that's not 5% in fees. Like escrow is not a fee. It's really a savings account that just goes to protect the lender in case you renege on the loan, so he has money to pay the taxes. So to answer your question, on the long-term side, 65% leverage, we might get you 70. We think 40% is a good rule of thumb, is what you should have. Teri mentioned income doesn't matter. No real restriction there, and that is we care about what you've done there more than what you've done here. I was just talking to another Canadian borrower earlier today, and we most certainly have the man, so to say, or the woman, not to be biased, but people that were born in Canada, that work in the US, that make significant US income, that have a US credit score. And those people don't get any greater leverage than somebody that's just, it really matters where you were born, your country of origin. If you're a foreign investor or foreign national, it's still at that 65%.
Yeah.
So even that person doesn't get 65 or even over 70. And
So
that,
Did you have any success before in over than 65 for foreign nationals?
yeah, well, we can, the highest we've ever gotten for a foreign national or foreign investor is 70%. So
Wow.
it's typically 65. We might get you 70. I'd rather you use 40% as your rule of thumb to be safe. And it'd be like icing on the cake if we get you that 70 as opposed to a 65.
Oh, okay.
And again, you know, one of the reasons that we say that is that, you know, there's about 3% that we'd like to consider for closing fees, title fees, legal fees, things that have nothing to do with us at all, have nothing to do with the lender. It
Yeah.
has to do with your title company. It has to do with the, again, if it's a state where you need an attorney to close, you guys need attorneys to close, you know, what you pay your attorney, government fees,
Yeah.
all of those things that have nothing to do with us. And so we always say about 3%. And then the other 2% is just what Neal said for escrow. You know, typically you're going to have 1 year of taxes and insurance in escrow, because think about it. If you were going to default, if something happened, it gives them a year to pay the taxes and insurance to sell the place,
Yeah.
you know, to take back ownership. So you're going to do that. You're going to have, you know, depending on whether it's already rented or whether it's not rented, it might take escrow for rental payments. And that could be up to 9 months.
Yeah.
You know, it could be up to 9 months, especially on refinances. You know, we say you absolutely have to have a rental, a lease in place when you do a refinance on a property.
I think also the vacancy rate is the same for the lending here in Canada and US, which is basically the NOI going to be based on the non-vacant units. So if you have vacant units, it's not going to take in consideration for the NOI, correct?
When you say when we have a bank, they're not going to take into consideration for the
For
what?
the NOI, the net operation income. When
Oh.
we're doing the underwriting, if it's non-vacant, then you're going to take only the non-vacant unit, but the vacant unit is not going to take on consideration. Did you have any success before to get financing on some of the lenders, whereas the vacant unit is taken in consideration?
Well, that's what we can do it. You're going to get a little ding on your interest rate, and you're probably going to put about 9 months of payments of principal and interest, taxes, insurance in escrow in order just to protect them.
Well,
So
we can
they'll-
most certainly get it done. If you don't have a lease in place, we have a product for you. It just comes with a cost.
Oh, 100%.
Again, and those are on refinances. That's not on a purchase. On a purchase, you don't have to have a lease in place, just for
Okay.
refinance.
We're talking again about the multifamily, the same products for the multi and the single family homes. Oh,
Yes.
okay.
That's right.
Okay.
That's
okay.
right.
So
Now, you take a
again,
little ding- I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
go
you
ahead.
take that.
no, go ahead.
You might take a little ding on the leverage being a multifamily, because what we've noticed, and we funded our fair share of multifamily, and the reason we've done that is because, first of all, I was surprised Teri didn't mention, we charge a flat rate, no upfront fees. When you close a loan with us, we charge you $2,500. So this is a multifamily show. So you folks have significant properties I'm sure you're purchasing.
Yeah.
If you're buying something significant, we'll never get beat on fees. Now, I should say,
Usually
we
1%.
have usually they charge you some percent or some points in that.
Brokers,
will
brokers
say-
are typically charging a percent of the
Yeah.
purchase
Yeah.
price.
Yeah.
We charge 2,500 flat rate, again, at closing. I'm not going to tell you that we don't have lenders who do pay us on the back end. They absolutely do. We have lenders who don't pay us a darn thing, and we have others that do. And you may see that, you know, on the HUD, or you may not see that on the HUD. But our fee, regardless, is always going to be 2,500. We don't
That's
charge
really-
points.
That's
we
really
don't charge
competitive.
points on a
Yeah.
loan.
Yeah,
It is. It's very competitive.
Yeah.
You know, especially when we get brokers and who's like, I'll take $40,000 on that deal. I'm like, no.
And it just never closes usually.
never
because you
closes.
Get a less expensive. So we thought, because we did the same work, and by the way, I wouldn't be doing our job. I know it's a multifamily show, but we have no minimum in a lot of states. So nothing for you to
And
think
which,
about.
by the way, you can get multifamily buildings for fix and flip for under $100,000 in some states. I mean, it's crazy.
And by the way, that's a
The
good
small
segue.
ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
On the flip side, we have a flip product for multifamily also, where we could fund most of your purchase price and all of your rehab, so long it fits in that 70% of the ARV box.
And we're talking about residential, so it's going to be 4 units or less. When you get into 5 or more units, we still have a product for that. Commercial, multi-unit buildings, we can do that as well.
So if you're buying something needs a little work, we can help you fund that also. And then we have some no seasoning products, real important. So if you end up paying cash for a place and it appraises for higher than what you paid, we could take you out. You take a little ding on the leverage at 60%, just outright cash out the day after closing, but at the higher value. So, a lot of times you're paying, $1 million that something might come in and, I'm picking some high figure, by the way, it could be a $10,000 that comes in at 50, but you could still use the 50 the day after closing, or the, 1.5 million or whatever it is. So there's some really good products. We work with Canadians. We're really good at getting those closed. And by the way, the other question we get from Canada specifically is, do I have to come here for the closing? Most certainly not. We have a national title company that's really good with you folks. You can stay right at home. A lot of time we coordinate with your lawyer back home, which is, there is the notary. So we're really good with that stuff too. Other questions?
My next question is for a big multifamily with there's no boots on the ground as an investor in US with single family home. What is the lender usually looking for approval? Is it experience, having like a partner, like property management, contractors?
Just for the purchase of the property?
I'm sorry?
Just for the purchase?
Yeah, for the purchase. Yeah, I'm talking about, again, with no boots on the ground. What is guarantee far from the 40%? 40%.
Remember, we don't care.
Oh, okay.
We just don't care.
We don't care what kind of income you make.
All we care is that when the lender wants to see the money to put down on it, it's sitting in an American bank account. That's all that we need to know.
Okay.
And so we always say, make sure that you open up an American bank account, because you're going to transfer the money over there. They want to see liquidity. They want to see liquidity. So if you're looking for something where you need $400,000 down, you need to show $400,000 sitting in that bank account.
So this is basically my question, which is proof of fund. What is the timeline usually when you have a deal, you want to show the proof of fund, especially for the Canadian part?
Most of the lenders say that they want something within 60 to 90 days. They want to see that money in there. Exactly. And so whether it's a money market account, wherever you're going to transfer the money from, they want to see those statements. They want to see, and we want to see that too. I mean, I can't tell you how many times people come to us and they say, I've got a $1.5 million property and I've got $10,000 in my bank account.
Like, what are you going to do with that?
Like, how?
I think the question will be not this. The question is if it's an actual GPLP structure, and this is one of my questions is what the actual lender expectation when the actual buyer is an actual entity like in an actual legal structure like GPLP, when the actual fund is going to be as part of shares, where the actual passive investor will show their fund or provide their fund 6 or 8 weeks before the closing. So what is the lender requirement in this case? Because you're saying 60 to 90 days before closing. So this is one of the question when you have an actual, I'm not going to say complicated structure, but not an actual direct seller or buyer, I'm sorry. When there is an actual complicated case, when you have a GPLP structure and the fund is not going to be ready, what is the lender usually guideline for this part?
Again, they're going to want to see that money in there. Really, first off, it depends on who the lender is. They all have different criteria. And remember, because this is an unregulated industry, they can make up their own rules. If they want to see it there for 60, 90 days, or some others say, we're fine the day before closing. It really just depends on who we're using.
Okay.
So, just as long as you know that you have the money, I mean, when we send you a term sheet, the term sheet's going to show exactly what you're going to need, to close the loan. And then we said add 5% to that, for, again, for all the third-party closing costs and the escrows. So you should know right up front if you will be able to show the lender that you have that money.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
My next question.
Also,
before we go ahead.
No, the GP, LP, so you got a GP brings together, you're going to put together multifamily, maybe just one asset that he's going to purchase. We'd like to think that that GP has experience in assets also. So even though with his left hand, he has his own bank account, he's most certainly not going to do that at closing. He's going to use some other assets. That's more than fundable because, you know, somebody that's putting together a GP, LP type structure has experience. They probably, you know, not their first venture. So I don't think the liquidity be as much of a factor. But to answer your question, we just really need to see a screenshot of where that money is coming from, you know, because we're pretty trusting. We've only had one person in the last couple of years who like, I'm not closing, I don't have the money. What do you waste everybody's time for? Most people, you know, I was saying for a while, like a man's word is his bond, but you know, why would you want to go through all the trouble of sending all your documents and having to pay for an appraisal and go through the title process and not have the money? That's just a waste of everybody's time. So it never happens.
Okay.
A good question.
Okay. So my
Well,
next question. Okay.
Go
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It was about
No,
the
you go
fees,
ahead.
to be honest, but go ahead.
Well, I was gonna kind of segue to another place. You know, I'm putting together a training program right now that I want to release in the next couple of weeks. I'm working on it very hard. And one of the big hangups with multifamily units, and it's in big cities, you know, especially, is understanding zoning. Zoning is super important. It seems that, you know, when you're getting into a lot of these multifamily buildings, they have done things to these buildings that are not zoned correctly. So I always have, I would say what, probably 50% of them. I mean, a lot. And when you're looking at multifamily homes, and you're looking at pictures, because a lot of you guys are looking at pictures online, and I'm going to give you an example of, you know, a woman who she was a Canadian who brought us a piece of property for a fix and flip. And it was a 2-unit, it was 2 single family homes, shared roof, shared wall, duplex. Looked like a duplex from the outside.
Yeah.
And everything else in the neighborhood was multifamily, 2-unit multifamily, identical looking buildings. But I said to her, hey, listen, these are 2 single family homes under one roof with a shared wall. We cannot finance them, even though the gentleman who is selling them to you is selling it to you as one package. It doesn't matter. They're 2 separate single family homes. And so looking at that, and how long was she yelling at me? Oh, she was yelling at me. She's like, they're everywhere. They're all over the neighborhood. Everybody has these properties. I don't care that everybody has these properties. Yours is 2 single family homes under one roof with a shared wall. Everything else are multifamily duplexes. They're everywhere.
Did you had any before instance when an actual building was 20 units, it was like zoned for different number of units or something? I don't think so.
Well, you know, it's usually not the 20-unit building. It's the 2, 3, and 4-unit buildings.
Oh, okay.
That it should be 2 and somebody made it 4. It should be 2 and somebody made it 3.
Okay.
You know, it should be 3 and now it's 4. Those are the things. And I always say this, and we'll send you the training program. You're going to love it. And I said, you have to be leery every time somebody says mother-in-law suite, you know, office with separate entrance, you know, bonus room. Those are big no-nos. And so when you're looking at these properties, you know, do your due diligence. If it looks weird, you know, it seems odd, you know, unless it says 3 family, you know, or 2 family or 5 family, you know, whatever that it is, you know, make sure that that's what it is. And you can just go into the county records. You could go to the township records. And we just had that happen last week. You know, somebody had a building, it had 3 kitchens in it. And I said, it's a single family home, but they divided it into 3 and they were selling it as 3.
Yeah.
So that's a no-no. You don't want to do that. You cannot change zoning while you are under contract with a
lender. Yeah.
No,
exactly.
you cannot.
Once you get that
So
started.
people will say, well, I'll just change the zone. No, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't do that. So that is a big deal with multifamily buildings, is understanding. It rarely happens when it's 5 or more units, you know, 20 units. It doesn't happen. It's when it's 2, 3, 4 units. It happens all the time.
100%.
Yeah.
So regarding the fee structure I think guys, you're focused more on the new term, which is the private money institutions like Mac, and this is your main focus on this part, because I think the fee is a famous subject here, which is the broker fee and lender fee. What is the regular lender fee when you're dealing with multifamily? And is there any difference between negative less than 5 units and plus 5 units when you're dealing with the lender fee and the broker fee? You mentioned that the broker fee always $2,500, correct?
Yeah, we're always 2,500. Again, Teri gave the standard disclosure that we have lenders that will pay us above and beyond that. It has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
However, we have lenders, which is a very good question. We have lenders that have no points.
No fees.
So there's no fee. Now there is a fee for underwriting.
Yeah.
Typically on a multifamily, it might be $29.95 as an example, one that comes to mind. And those appraisals are more expensive. You might pay a couple $3,000 for the
But
appraisal.
those are the third, it's the appraisal's a third party fee.
Yep.
So, but on fees, we try to, when we get a fair number of offers every day, some for multifamily. And the first thing the team does here is they decide which lender has the least expensive with the best rate for that borrower.
Yeah.
Is the first thing we're going to do. So we're going to first try to show you in writing, this is what your loan looks like with no lender points. And we may give you some verbalization in the body of the email that says, you know, for 3 or 4 points, you can buy the rates down, which would add to the lender fee, but that gets you a better rate. But we try to get you no lender points as much as we can. Very good question.
So yeah, we have a handful of lenders that we do for long-term. These are long-term, not flips. So long-term, 20, 30-year loans that we absolutely are going after the lowest rate for the least amount of fees. And then we always give you the option to have a lesser, rate. And, again, when we do that, one of the questions on all of our applications is how long do you plan on keeping that piece of property? If you're planning on keeping it for 30 years, points make sense. If you're planning on keeping it for, 5 years, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Just pay the higher rate because you're never going to pay down those fees. You're never going to recoup your costs.
Yeah. 100%.
And we put that, again, when I see how long somebody's going to keep the loan, that's part of our offer.
I think one of my next question will be if there is an actual product can make sense for lowering the debt service ratio, especially if there's a product with 35 or 40 years, because the usual on commercial, we go with 25 or 30 years with fixed rate. But I was trying to ask if for Canadians cross-border, if there's any product beyond the 30 years term for amortization.
I would tell you that we had a 40-year with a lender who just sucks. So we don't work with them.
Okay.
It was so bad. We thought, we have each one of our lenders is, everybody does the same thing. So, why have 5 different lenders who do exactly the same thing? We have lenders that we choose, number one, because they pick up the phone first and foremost. And just so you all know out there, we pick up the phone 7 days a week until we go to bed.
Exactly.
Pretty much till we go to bed.
Now there comes a point every night where she stops answering.
Yeah.
Okay. She's ready for that cocktail. We don't have that on my side.
I start giving shit away. I'm sorry. It's
She's
just,
like, free interest
I'm like,
rate.
sure, I'll do that.
That's it.
And our lenders will pick up the phone on Saturday. They'll pick up the phone on Sunday. We can talk to them. And that is super important to us. Then in terms of, I was going to say, it all depends. We always say it just depends.
Now, these are direct lenders. Teri mentioned earlier, and we've been saying a lot lately that we work with folks that are right next door to the bank, not in the back alley behind the bank. So we don't have any Vinny in Brooklyn. We typically suggest 30 days for the close and 20 days for funding, so you can get your appraisal and title work in. And this way, after 20 days, that funding or mortgagee clause gives you the opportunity to walk away, still get your money back. Not, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So, or nothing lost in this case. So,
but we can tell you where to go for that 40-year interest. No, we tell you where to go. You can go direct.
That's right.
We won't work with them, but you can go direct.
So, but I will also say on those direct lenders that we work with, that we can design it pretty much however you want. So 40 years of requisite, we don't get that request ever. You're the first person. Now, we did have a 40-year, like it's a 40-year IO. The first 10 were interest only. And then after that, it turns into a 30-year fully amortized IO interest only. And it was a bad lender. So anybody that
and by the way, we absolutely love our rep there. We've worked with him since we started this business. he moved to this company and they could not, what do you say, couldn't fight himself out of a paper bag. I mean, it was terrible.
Well, he called the other day. He says he's closing his December loans.
He said, "I'm closing
And
my
it's already
December
May.
loan."
Come on.
And I said, it's awful. Like, we can't work with people like that. And so we absolutely love our rep there. We just cannot work under those circumstances. And what does Neal always say? They couldn't tie their shoes on their loafers. Couldn't tie their shoes on the loafers. We couldn't get anybody on the phone. It took us, 70 days to close?
Yeah, 70, 75 day
Absolutely
wait just detracts from our product. So anything
not.
that detracts from our product, we get lenders that call all the time or send us emails. I mean, we had a 10:30 call today that never came through. And we're just as happy just because we'll listen to you, but we don't need another lender. So we have really good lenders. And I will tell you that if you were to venture out there on Adam's show and go to other brokers that are out there, the brokers you'll see, we're all about the same. I don't know what other places do in terms of their rates, but we're fixed rate. But what we do different is we're really good at getting your loan closed. So if you have problems with your lender, we'd like to save you there too. We do a lot of those saves too. We have one earlier today that we'll probably be able to close mid this month that we just picked up today, where somebody had an appraisal from another company. The other lender fell apart for whatever reason. Just give us a shot.
If you read our reviews, you'll see a lot of that. We fix the impossible, which makes us feel good. We do a good job.
So what kind of market you're focusing on, guys? Like it's nationwide, like for deals, because this is another
nationwide. There's nowhere we can't help you with funding pretty much. But I will say, especially on a cross border, anything that looks really glamorous, like we've had some requests for like Hawaii as an example, beautiful state, very expensive homes, terrible rent roll, which back to the DSCR, it's just not going to support itself. But, we work with folks, and that is, especially we work with folks that are in Canada that want to be able to go to their property. So you folks, especially the new ones that are on the podcast today, I would encourage you to kind of like that old compass we had when we were a kid, keep making a circle from your house, an hour, 2 hours, whatever that is. And if it puts you in Detroit, by the way, for the longest time, Detroit wasn't so great. But the fact, when I say so great from a lender standpoint, we have great lenders for Detroit, for Michigan. Ohio is a good Canadian market, so to say, where we get a lot of interest. And
but you want to pick cities when you're doing multifamily homes. You want to pick cities that for instance, like a Chicago, like where the cost of the homes are so high that most people can't afford them, so they rent. You have very high rental market,
like Toronto for you folks.
Yeah, very high rental market. And that's where you make your mistake, is going into these markets where, people can afford to buy their own homes because they're, median 150, 175,000. We don't want to do that. You want to go invest someplace where the price of housing is high. You're going to get your best rental roll. You'll get your best. That's where you invest. So Chicago, unfortunately, is a terrible place to get a loan. Nobody likes us at all, and I guess we're not very lender friendly when it comes to evictions and things like that. We're not very lender friendly. So
I don't think it's a rental. Is this rent control in Chicago or not?
There is rent control, but what we have in place is that if it's below 40 degrees, you can't evict somebody. So it could take you a year to evict somebody, and so we have a problem with people, moving in September and then stop paying their rent. That's why a lot of the northern cities they don't like. There's a lot of them that are like that.
I think the move is more to Alabama, Tennessee, Atlanta, Dallas.
Great funding areas.
Great funding areas for us. And by the way, some of those out of the way places, we have some, I don't want to use the word rural, but we've been able to, we funded someplace like.
It's not going to get a multifamily home rural,
Multifamily. No, we had that one. We had a hotel.
Oh, a hotel. It was a
hotel or some kind of resort or something, but nobody else would do it. But we had a lender for it.
I was going to say that's not multifamily. That was commercial motel.
Right.
So yes, pick cities, and you can go in and just look online and say, this is the city I'm going to pick. What is the population of renters to homeowners? And you want to pick high rental.
So let's jump to your investment career. We were focusing on the lending side. So how many assets under management so far?
Myself,
Yeah, or your
Okay,
husband too.
I have sold everything as of January. I am no
Okay.
longer property, all gone. It's
Okay.
all gone.
So the
And
focus
what
is more
we're-
in lending.
Well, we want to take it to the next level. We like to start funding our own deals in-house.
Oh, okay.
But we want to do.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, what are you going to do with the money, right?
Yeah. So for the people who wanna follow your success, especially on the lending side, where they can find you?
Where can they find us?
Yeah.
Listen, I will tell you one thing. If you just put in Teri and Lending, she'll probably come up. But we have a great presence. If you just Google our company, NSS, Never So Simple.
Never So Simple.
Never So Simple, NSS. And it's for a
You can't
reason.
miss
and
us.
that
We
is-
take up the first 2 pages, I think.
Exactly.
Okay.
You see a lot of Trustpilot and Google reviews, just telling you that.
I think if you just put in Teri and Neal Lending, we'll come up.
Probably
Great.
so. We have a great presence. We're real
Yeah.
proud of them. And we appreciate the opportunity to speak to anybody and everybody today, especially on your show. And if anybody has any questions, they can call us, like Teri said, 7 days a week. That's another reason we've been so successful is our accessibility.
Perfect. Thanks us a lot for coming to the show, and hope we
Thank
can bring
you.
you again to the show so we can focus more on exact products, especially on the multifamily side.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Adam.